Hello, welcome to Oklahoma Moments. Today we have with us Reverend Jim Gillum, pastor of the Wilson Assembly of God Church for the past 14 years. Welcome to Oklahoma Moments, Brother Gillum.
Thank you, Corrina.
And I have to say Brother Gillum because, or Brother Jim, but I'll say Brother Gillum because you've been my pastor for 14 years.
Yes.
I want to recognize you and honor you because you're a diabetic, and through the years you've had problems with your feet.
Quite a lot.
And I've seen you in a wheelchair twice. And you still go on and sacrifice your energy and your pain, forget about your pain, to go to funerals, perform weddings, go ahead and minister to your congregation and preach. And lots of times it's always with this heavy cast-type shoe that's very heavy. And you've had a lot of problems with your foot, but you've still gone ahead. So I usually have older people on my show when I do This Is Your Life. But, Brother Gillum, this is your life.
Enough.
You think you're old enough. This is your life. And I want to start out with where you were born, and I want you to tell me about your parents, where you grew up, your brothers and sisters, and where you went to school. I'm just going to let you take over and start in from where you were born and tell me on up.
Okay. Well, my parents moved to Terrell, Oklahoma, in Jefferson County in 1945, and there had been 9 children altogether at that time that was born to the family, and there was 2 girls deceased, and then I was born in 1948, and so I was the last one of the group, and of course I always said I was the best one because I was born at Terrell, you know, but always teased them, but I did. I had a lot of good times, had some bad times, but my mom was 40 years of age when I was born. My dad was almost 49 when I was born. And so it was almost like having grandparents by the time I got up a little older.
I know what you mean, because my dad was 53 when I was born. I was also the baby of the family.
But, you know, it was... We grew up knowing we were loved and having a lot of, we didn't have a lot of worldly possessions, but we had a lot of good times together. Of course, like anybody else, we had our bad times, you know, but I still counted it a privilege to be from the family I was, that I'm from, you know, and haven't always been and done my best in my life. But,
you haven't always been a preacher, have you?
No. And there was a...
We won't tell about the motorcycle days?
No, we'll forget about those. But through it all, it has been a privilege to live, and I love Oklahoma. I went on vacation in 1987 and went to about 5 or 6 different states. And when I came back down through Kansas, and we came through Dodge City, Kansas, and on through and back into the Panhandle. And when I got across the state line, I got out and I got down on my hands and knees and kissed the ground. I said, man, I'm so glad to be back in Oklahoma. I love Oklahoma. When I go to Oklahoma City and I start back toward Wilson, this area down in here, if it's at night, when I get to that Carter County sign and I see the lights of Ardmore around the curve, I think I'm home. And I love every minute.
Well, there again, I can relate to you because I know when several times when I took tours to foreign countries, and when even over there when we'd see an American flag, oh, your heart would just pound, you know. And so then when we got back and saw the Statue of Liberty or whatever, and then when we got back to Oklahoma, and then when we got back to Carter County, so your heart just kind of pounds,
right.
and there is nothing that looks as good as when it says welcome to Wilson.
Right. I always said I'm Oklahoma bred and Oklahoma fed, and when I die I'll be Oklahoma dead.
Well, and you grew up around Red River.
Yes. I was born almost throwing distance of Red River, right up on the bluff on the Oklahoma side, in a little 2-room house. And the old house is gone now. It's all fell in. But before it fell in, my dad and I went out there one day, about 25 years ago, I guess, and looked it over. It was still standing.
And wondered how so many people
how we all lived in that place.
Well, you know, back then, every kid didn't have its own bedroom. And
right.
If you were like me, I was born in 37, and even though the Big Depression was in 29, the Depression hung around here in this area, but it hung around with my family still in the 50s, because I remember, and I know you did, as honored as you were,
Right.
remember when they had the outdoor toilets, because
Exactly.
especially with Halloween.
Very many so.
But
Moved a few, turned
yes.
over a few.
And so, but did you get any pictures or recapture any memories? I know you recaptured memories and had a good visit with your dad when you went back to the old home place.
Oh, yes, I just got him. He and I rode around, and we went and looked over the land out in there. When they moved to Terrell, they moved from down toward around Springer area and Woodford area and down in there. And they lived in an old place down by the Lazy Ass Ranch. And I have an uncle that ran that ranch for many years, and I have a cousin that's works on that ranch now, Tommy Rankin. Yes, and
Tommy Rankin,
so,
his wife is a writer.
Yes.
She writes a column in the.
Very
right.
sweet
She and
girl.
I was in the were in the Southern Oklahoma Writers Association together. Yes.
Right. So my brothers and sisters that were old enough went to school at Springer when they were in school, and then when they moved out to Terrell, one of the farmers out there, his name was Preacher Jackson. They called him Preacher Jackson, and he wasn't a preacher. He was a good Christian man. But anyway, he and another fellow by the name of Pete Gamble went out to the Springer area and moved them to Terrell on an old flatbed hay truck. And Preacher told me about 10 or 12 years ago that my dad made him and my older brothers made the best crop of watermelons he ever had. And that first year they were there. And so they sharecropped for different farmers around there. And
that's known as watermelon country.
Oh, yes.
Because we used to drive down there and get watermelons.
I've worked in them until I finally
didn't want
got
to go
sense
out.
enough to leave and quit working.
You didn't have to go out and borrow a watermelon from the neighbor's patch. You were in it.
I've done that a couple of times.
Did they taste better coming from a neighbor's
They always
patch?
say they do, but I can't remember. but you know, seriously, I remember a lot of good times, even out in the fields, working in watermelons, getting them ready, hoeing, and then gathering them, bringing them into town, loading them into trucks, you know, and had a lot of good times doing that with my friends and all, you know, and it was hard work, but in a way you miss it, you know, and it gets into your blood. Farming gets into your blood, and you enjoy it and you love it, and you sometimes hate it on those 105 or 10 days, you know,
when you're pulling,
the temperature is
when
so
you're hoeing
hot.
peanuts.
Yes. I used to chop cotton, hoe
Yeah.
cotton. A lot of people don't know there's a difference between chopping cotton and hoeing cotton, but there is. But
Chopping, you cut down every other stalk.
yeah.
I know what
when
that
you're-
is.
When you're hoeing it, you thin it out. When you're just chopping it, you weed it out.
Uh-huh.
But you know, when it come bowl pulling time, that's what we call it, bowl pulling, and we'd go out and pull cotton.
And there's a difference on pulling and picking.
Picking.
If you pick cotton, you pick the cotton out
Right.
of the bolls. If you pull the bolls, you pull the boll and all. And I can remember every fall we would go pick cotton, and how your fingers would bleed. We didn't have gloves, but you had to pick the cotton. And those bowls were sharp, where they open up and you pick the cotton out.
The burrs. And,
Yeah, the burrs, yeah.
After they got what they call separator at the cotton gins, and you pull the burr and everything, and then it would separate it. And
I guess since
take
I'm
the
older
cotton
than
out.
you, I guess they didn't have the
They
separator
must not,
before.
that's what it was. That's what it is exactly. And so we would pull cotton all day, you know. And I always teased people. I said I was in the cotton patch when God called me to preach, which actually I wasn't. But I was already married when God called me to preach. But I said I looked up into the sky and I saw the clouds spelled out GP. And I said, "Oh Lord, you're calling me to preach." He said, "Go preach." But after I preached my first message, I told people, I said, "There's this little man," and he came up to me and he said, after I told that story, and he said, "Son, I think God meant for you to go plow. You missed your calling." But I am proud God did call me, you know, and if he had made a farmer out of me, that'd been fine too, you know. But I'm proud of what I do.
Well, you had a slick 1955
1957.
1957 Chevy.
Beautiful car.
And that's when you met your
I was
present
driving
wife.
that car.
What color was it?
1957 two-door hardtop.
Man, those
Bel
are
Air.
slick. Those, the
Had the
fin?
little fins, yeah. And met her on a Sunday afternoon 33 years ago. This coming October 29th. I think it's 3 days from now, in fact. I met her on Sunday afternoon. She and her little sister were riding around in Terrell, and I pulled them over.
And a preacher's daughter, you didn't get to date her until you went to church, did you?
She was a deacon's daughter.
Oh,
actually,
deacon's
in the
daughter.
church. And so
You must have felt hard to give up your motorcycles and everything, and just
I
to
gave
take
up a little bit. I gave up everything for her. I'll tell you, I was willing. She was special then, and she's still special today.
She's a very special lady.
We've been married for over 32 years, and about 32 and a half years, in fact. And I went to church with her on 2 nights to a revival in Ryan after I had met her, and gave my heart to the Lord that night, and I made a change. I remember
you knew you'd better.
That was on Halloween night, 33 years ago. And when I went back the next morning, I was senior in high school, and I went back to school the next morning, and that afternoon I saw deputy sheriff, that was J.D. Spoon, and he's still living today, and a good friend of mine.
And you're an honorary deputy, aren't you?
Well, I was. I'm not anymore, but I used to be. But anyway, J.D., I saw him that afternoon after school was out, and I told him, I said, J.D., I said, you won't have to worry about me anymore. I said, I got saved last night. I gave my heart to Jesus. He said, you didn't either. And he thought I was
He thought you were joking. Halloween joke.
Yeah. But anyway, I really did. And, it's been an uphill battle in many ways, but it's all come out in the end, and just like the Scripture says, God said He would take care of us if we'd serve Him, and He has.
Well, where all have you pastored?
I pastored my first church. I was associate pastor for almost 4 years in Oklahoma City at Airport Assembly of God. And then in 1977, the first part of August, I believe it was August the 7th, actually, I took a church in Maysville, Oklahoma, my first church to be senior pastor. And the Lord blessed us, and we grew, and God helped us. And, we did real good there, and then I went, after a few years, I went to Antlers, and I pastored First Assembly at Antlers. And then I pastored a short term at Kearney, Oklahoma. And then I was pastoring at Bowlegs, where I pastored 3.5 to 4 years before I came to Wilson, and I've been here 14 years.
Tell me the joke about, or not really a joke, but you had a real nice church bus when you were at Bowlegs.
Oh, yes.
Tell about your trip. You taking a group to Arkansas.
we just bought this. I can't remember if it was a 66 or 72 passenger bus. It was a huge bus. And I went to the sign painter, and I didn't make it clear. I actually wanted First Assembly of God, Bowlegs, Oklahoma, put on it. And when I went to pick it up, it had Bowlegs Assembly of God. And so we made a trip down the Talamina Drive, down into Arkansas. And when we got to Mena, Arkansas, we stopped at a little store, and we're going to fill up with fuel. And I saw these 2 little elderly ladies looking at the side of our bus. So I told everyone, I was driving at the time, and I told everyone, I said, hold on just a minute. And there was about 60 of us on the bus, and plus there was a few vans that was following us. So I said, but when you get off, I said, everybody go in the store, walk bow-legged. And we did, and I'll tell you, we caught some eyes, and we had some fun with folk, But anyway, that's what life is about.
Wherever you go, there's going to be fun.
We love it. We love it.
And, well, when I met you, it wasn't a very fun occasion. You had a young, he was about 38 or 40, church member.
I believe he was 40.
40, that had almost fatal heart attack.
Yes, yes.
And we were in intensive care unit, waiting room in Presbyterian Hospital.
Man's name was Glenn Seiler. Was on, it was 19...
It was Christmas Day, 1985.
It was the day after Christmas when I came.
Okay.
I got a call down. I was down home visiting with my folks. And about 8 o'clock that morning, I received a call from a lady out of the church where I had pastored there. And this was a little over a year after I had left there. I mean, before I left there. And so I had just gotten up, and I got the phone call, and she said that precious lady out of our church there, her husband had had a heart attack on Christmas Day, and he was 40 years old, and they had heliflighted him to Oklahoma City to the Presbyterian Hospital. So I called my father-in-law at Ryan and run by to get him, and we went to Oklahoma City, and while we were there visiting him, I walked into the waiting room and saw you sitting in the corner. Didn't know you, never had met you. And you were there, and after I got to talking to you, and I asked you if I told you I was a minister, if I could pray for you.
Well, all the doctors came out and told me Carl was dying.
Right.
They thought he was dying.
Right.
And I was there by myself and had a cast on and had pneumonia. When I almost fainted when they called me out in the hallway and told me he was dying. And I went back in and just fell back against the wall, and you came to me and asked if you could pray for me.
We had prayer, and then after we visited a little bit, and I
2
went
days
in with
later,
you.
yeah, you went in with me, and 2 days later, they came out and told me since he hadn't died, they were going to have to amputate his leg. And I said, no, I wouldn't, since one was crippled from 18 months old when he was injured, and it was his good leg that all the arteries were blocked, and they said they were going to have to amputate it. And I was again in shock, and you came over. You happened to come in, and you prayed with me again, and you went in, and you and your wife came back every day to visit him and didn't even know us.
Right.
Now, go on with the
I've
story.
always felt like, it doesn't make me any difference if a person is of another denomination. I love everybody, I try to, and when I visit the hospitals or the rest homes, I don't just pick out my denomination. I'll pray with anybody or visit with anybody or whatever. But Carl began to do better. And,
he did.
That's been, you might say 15 years.
Yes, in December it'll be 15 years. And the next year, the next summer, Carl had almost died again. I had him at home at that time and didn't even know where any of the kids were, and so we had rushed to the hospital. We were in the emergency room, and I was standing there praying, oh God, I wish somebody was here. At the time, you and another preacher rushed a kid through from Falls Creek. I had
two little boys, two little brothers, I think they were 10 and 12, and they had got up in the middle of the night off their bunks. One was going to the bathroom, the other was coming back, and the oldest little boy and the other one hit head on, and the little 12-year-old broke his 2 front teeth off on the little boy's forehead. And so, come to find out, while we were there, you were there with Carl.
And I didn't even recognize you. You recognized me and came back to me.
Came back and talked to you again. And then it wasn't just a few months after that. In fact, I believe that was in July or the 1st of August, and then it was just a couple of months after that on October the 12th when we came.
Well, one of your good church members was transferred, moved to Wilson, accepted a job as a coach.
He was a basketball coach here.
Was it Coach Brown? No, what was
Butler.
his? Coach Butler. And one time you came down to see him, and you went to the Dairy Queen or whatever it was at that time, and asked where we lived, and came to visit to see how Carl was.
I came by and visited with you, and the reason I came down here was to check on the church. I felt like God was going to lead us into a different direction, and so I came to check on the church and visited with some of the folk, and came by and visited you and visited Coach Butler. And then gave them my resume, and they called me, and I came down, and they voted us in, and we've been here.
And what was so odd, I heard that they were going to vote on you. Somehow, I don't even know how I heard. And so before I went on to my church to teach Sunday school class, I ran by there and went in, and I said, listen, I hear you're going to be voting for Brother Jim Gillum today. And I told him about my experience with you and meeting you and how you came back. You made it a point to come back every day there for 3 weeks because Carl was in intensive care for several weeks, and then when he came out, and you made it a point to come back every day. And I thought, if someone, I said, I stopped to tell you this because if someone cares that much for a stranger, then I'm sure he would care for his congregation, and you have.
We try. I know we're not perfect. We're just, like the song says, we're just pilgrims here in this life. But at the same time, we're looking for a city whose builder and maker is God, and that's what we're seeking for. And so in this life, and I set out, when I surrendered to the call to the ministry, I told God, I said, if God, if you will just, in all of my ministry, if I can just win one person to you, and that person make it to heaven, it'll be worth every effort. And I believe there's been many more than that,
yes.
you know. But God has blessed us, and I don't take the credit because without God I couldn't do it.
And you and your wife, Shanista, you have 2 children, Darla and Dwayne, and you have 1 granddaughter. Oh, I forgot about Alyssa. You have 2, yes. I forget about Alyssa. How old is Alyssa?
She will be, on January the 22nd, she will be 4. We got her when she was 6 weeks old.
She's precious.
And she was awarded to us, I guess you would say.
God gave her to you.
God gave her to us.
And it's never been the same since.
One of Nista's first cousins called us one day, and she was having some difficulty. And so she said, would you keep her for a while, in a few weeks? And we went to Oklahoma City that evening and picked her up. And we've had her ever since.
That's great. She's a beautiful
just went through the adoption, and probably within the next 30 to 60 days, her name will be changed
officially
to Gillum. And
well, I just refer to her to Alyssa Gillum, and we all have. And I think everyone in the church has spoiled her rotten.
Right.
I love when she's walking back and puts her hands on her hips, you know, and I'll shake my finger at her. She knows you can tell when she's doing something that her mother doesn't want, because as she's walking, she'll keep looking back at her mother up there at the organ. She always does this while her mother's at the organ playing.
She's something else.
But she's a doll. She's precious. And you have 1 granddaughter?
I have a granddaughter, Chelsea. She's about 7 and a half.
And of course, I know
She's
you
in
lost
second grade, Data.
I know you lost a little grandson.
Lost a little grandson that would be about 12 and a half now. His name was Dustin Dwayne, would have been, and we lost him when he was an infant. And but we know where he is,
yes.
And we know we're going to heaven to see him one day.
Well, and you lost your father
7.5 years ago, approximately. He was a good man. I loved him with all of my heart. He would always, when I would witness to him after I became a minister and became saved and all, he would say, now, Jimmy, you know I'm Baptist. And I would say, now, Daddy, it doesn't make any difference. You know, are you right with the Lord? And so I would visit with him time to time, and I was preaching a revival in Terrell. And by the way, we went to Baptist church when I was a child. I loved Baptist.
Oh, yeah, I know that, yeah.
But anyway, and I was preaching revival in 1980, and he was 80 years of age.
Yes.
And he came forward, and he hugged me, and he said, I need to dedicate my life to the Lord completely. And so he did. And after that, he was always sweet, but there was such a change in him. And after that, every time I saw him, which he had never told me this before in my life, but every time I saw him after that, he told me he loved me.
Well, you know, Brother Gillum, when we were growing up, it wasn't masculine for men to show that affection and to put their arms around their child and say, I love you. You'll find a lot of people our age, you know, it was always the mother that said, I love you or whatever, but the fathers didn't. That was the masculine type.
Exactly.
And the men weren't supposed to cry, but I think men have the, you know, I think it's okay for a man to cry, same as a woman.
I don't believe a man has really become a man until he has shed tears over his family of joy and happiness and plus sorrow.
Yes,
You know.
yes.
And I believe that makes you grow into a man when you love them enough that you will weep for them. Jesus wept over the city of Jerusalem. We need to weep for our families in
Yes.
prayer and in dedication to them.
Yes. Well, you brought a picture of your mom and dad.
Yes, I
At
did.
this time, let's...
It's about 12 or 13
yes,
years
there
old.
they are. Yes.
Precious people.
That was made, what, just before he passed away?
No, it's about 12 or 13 years of age. I went
you
down
mean
and
the
took them
picture
to
is. The picture was
the
is about...
picture is,
yeah.
yes. I went down and took them to one of the churches at my hometown, and they were having portraits made, and I got them to go up, talked them into it, and they went up and made that picture, and I'm proud of it, and all the other families proud of it.
Yes.
We're proud of it.
Well, you also had a sister you were very close to, and now have you lost? How many in your family have you lost?
3 sisters. There's in all of the children. There's 7 of us living, and there's 3 sisters. 2 of them died before I was born, and then I have a sister that passed away in Oklahoma City, Midwest City, about 11 and a half years ago, and she was precious. She helped raise me, and her name's Maudie Ann, and she was like a mother to me.
Mm-hmm.
She was about 12 and a half, 13 years old when I was born, and so she was very, very precious.
I knew
love her
you've
with all
talked
my
about
heart.
her a lot, and I know you
Right.
were very close to her.
Yes.
And have you kept record of how many funerals that you have preached?
1,683.
1,683 funerals. And you and your wife have usually sang specials at each funeral.
We sang at a lot of funerals,
Mhm.
yes.
And the one you get a lot of requests for is "I Won't Have to Worry Anymore."
Yes.
I know that's.
Good
But
song.
have you by any chance written down how many weddings?
It's almost 1,100 now. It's, I believe, 1,096, if I'm not mistaken. I keep a record on it.
I'm proud you do, because just like in doing this, that's just part of your life.
Right.
And when your family starts doing genealogy, and usually we're dead before anyone starts digging up on our life and start doing research, but I think that's great, and that's a great record.
Well, one of the reasons that I started doing that was, to have a record in case I ever needed, in case someone wanted to talk to me about the deceased or whatever, But another reason is that I feel it's an honor and a privilege for a minister to say the last rites over someone, to speak of their life, and to deal with death, so that people will know that death doesn't have to be total sorrow. Even though we miss our loved ones, death can be a blessing if a person is a child of God.
That's right.
And they die in Jesus. When they are ill and they have suffered and saw pain, I've always said there's perfect healing in death when a person goes to heaven, because we'll never have another sorrow or another hurt.
Well, and you have ministered, and through the years, of course, Carl was at home for 8.5 years, took care of him there, but you would always come and minister, and you come and visit him, and then since he's been in the nursing home for the past 6.5 years, you have gone to visit him, and when you go over every Wednesday night to the nursing home service and you visit, you make those little people's evening, because you're always pleasant, and no matter how you might feel, you always bring out the positive and the best and have a big smile on your face, and that means a lot, and I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate that, too. I appreciate you, Corrina.
And I appreciate Brother Gillum, no matter who it is, and they call. You don't even have to know the people, but if someone calls, and lots of times you came to Oklahoma City when my daughter was having health problems or surgery or whatever. Dallas, Oklahoma City, I know the late Rhonda Barnes, you made lots of trips for her, and others, just numerous people.
Precious girl.
She was, wasn't she?
Loved her so much.
And so there's so many people that you have ministered to. I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you. Count it an honor and a privilege. And it's just, like I said a while ago, there's a lot of trials and troubles in the world. But I keep my eyes on the cross. And I have a sign in my office, a little sign that says, ain't nothing going to come up today that me and the Lord can handle. And I believe that with all of my heart.
That's right. Well, I think on that note that we will close our interview here. It's been great having you. I'm proud, even though with all the rain and the electricity going off, but I wouldn't dare complain about the rain after we have been praying for the rain and having special prayer for the rain. So it is great, but I'm so glad you were able to make it today, and thank you for the sacrifice on coming, because it was a big sacrifice for you.
Glad.